On this week's NESN Patriots podcast, we will discuss New England's fourth and final preseason game against New York Giants, and we will talk about all of the upcoming roster cuts that are fast approaching. Hello and welcome to the NESN Patriots podcast. I am Doug Kai, joined as always by Zach Cox. Zach, how are you doing?
I am doing fantastic, Doug. How are you? Happy that the preseason is over and we get some actual, real, legitimate football coming up soon.
Yes, very soon, and we are joined by a special guest, Mark Daniels of the Providence Journal. Mark, how are you doing?
What's going on, guys? I'm actually sad. The preseason's coming to an end.
Really?
That's just a joke. No,
okay.
I'm not.
That was a fantastic joke. Just to clarify, we are actually driving back from the Patriots' fourth and final preseason game that we watched last night against the New York Giants. It is Friday morning, so if you hear road noise, if you hear honking, if you hear like me swearing at drivers or something, then I guess that would be the reason why. But with that out of the way, let's get right into it. Let's all just, this will be a fun exercise, let's all give one player that we think helped their case last night in the Patriots preseason game, and then we'll go back around and give one player that hurt their case in the Patriots final preseason game. I will be nice and start out with you, Mark. You will be able to take the easiest player, and then Zach will go, and then I will go and make it difficult on myself. So Mark, who do you think helped their case the most last night?
It's really simple. It's J.C. Jackson. J.C. Jackson is the next undrafted free agent to make the Patriots' 53-man roster. Undrafted free agent out of Maryland. He had 2 interceptions on Kyle Laletta. He looks really good. He's had a good preseason, guys. He's had a good offseason. Remember in minicamp, he was lining up opposite of Stephon Gilmore, and we were all like, "Who is this kid?" But you know what? Last night against the Giants, he actually looked pretty good, and it looks like he might be able to help out, at least on the lower end of the depth chart. You never know how these guys translate to the regular season, but for me, the clear-cut winner in that is J.C. Jackson.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't think there's any argument that that J.C. Jackson was not the clear standout of this game. For me, I'll pick a guy who I think all of us expected to make the 53-man roster, and that's Adam Butler. It was a little bit surprising that he wasn't in that group of players who were running sprints before the game and then just kind of got to spend the night hanging out on the sideline. But he really only played about 17. I think he played exactly 17 snaps in this game, was out of the game by the end of the first quarter, generated some good pressure against those backup Giants offensive linemen, as he has been able to throughout the preseason. I don't know how much of an impact he's going to have this season because the Patriots are pretty deep along the defensive line, but I definitely think he kind of solidified himself in a roster spot there. Doug, who's your pick here?
My guy would be Matt Tobin, and that's really kind of based on an injury. Ulrich John suffered what appeared to be a foot or an ankle injury in Thursday night's game. We saw him in the locker room afterwards with a walking boot on his left foot. It really seemed like it was coming down to Ulrich John and Matt Tobin for one roster spot, and since Tobin stayed healthy, he played some left tackle, played some right tackle. Did he kick inside to guard last night as well?
He might. There was a lot of shuffling along the offensive line last night.
But he's got a lot of versatility on the offensive line. He's never been a huge impact player in the NFL, but the Patriots definitely needed a fourth offensive tackle to make this roster. So I'd say that Matt Tobin is the front runner in that role right now. We could see Cole Croston still be in the mix. He played a lot last night as well. He also played tackle. He's been playing guard. So the Patriots intend to keep 9 offensive linemen. Then maybe we see Matt Tobin and Cole Croston. But I think that based on that injury to John, Tobin was really one of the big winners from that fourth and final preseason game. So Mark, who do you think, this is a little bit harder, but who do you think hurt their chances the most in that preseason game?
That's a really, really good question. Who hurt their chances the most? You know, anytime I see someone like Marquise Flowers just playing in the fourth preseason game, I don't think it's a great sign. And that being said, I don't think he did much to really help his case. For those, who remember Marquise from last year, his final 2 games of the regular season, he had like 2.5 sacks. He had that one great game against Tyrod Taylor and the Bills where he had like 2 sacks and 10 tackles, and he actually played in the Super Bowl and looked like he might actually be a fit, I would say, weak outside linebacker. But this offseason, it just really hasn't materialized. He's been playing in the fourth quarter, and that might be due to the lack of depth at linebacker. But I don't think he really helped himself at all last night.
Yeah, you saw also a guy like Nicholas Grigsby played pretty much. Actually, he did play the entire game. He played every defensive snap at linebacker. But I definitely think he performed a little bit better than Marquise Flowers did, and I think he just has a lot more special teams value than Flowers. So if it ends up, I mean, Marquise Flowers obviously does play a lot on special teams as well, but if it comes down to a situation where they're keeping one of those two, I'm pretty sure that player is going to be Nicholas Grigsby. My guy for this is someone who didn't actually even play in this game, and that's Braxton Berrios. He was kind of a roster long shot anyway coming into last night, considering that he's barely played at all in the preseason and hasn't really been particularly impressive in practice or in these games. He came back and dressed for last night's game, so we thought maybe we might see him get back onto the field for the first time since that Redskins game a couple weeks back, but never entered the game, spent the whole time just with his helmet on the sideline. And I think, I know that we've discussed this before, he's probably a pretty strong candidate to wind up on injured reserve to start the season, because the Patriots really don't have much of a use for him right now, but he is a player that I think could get claimed if the Patriots do cut him and try to sneak him onto the practice squad. So I think it might be in their best interest to just stash him on injured reserve, basically give him a redshirt season, especially because it takes these slot receivers usually a year or two to develop anyway. Stash him on injured reserve, try this again next summer.
I might go with another wide receiver. I might go with Devin Lucien, just because there might have been a tiny glimmer of hope that a big fourth preseason game could have, possibly vaulted him onto the roster. The Patriots have really shallow depth at wide receiver, and he just didn't really do anything in that final preseason game. It was actually KJ May who was the receiver star of that game for the Patriots. He got a long 45-yard catch from quarterback Danny Etling. I might put Danny Etling kind of in that same category. He did have the massive 86-yard run, which was super impressive on the option keeper. But just from a passing standpoint, I don't think that he did anything in that game that would force another team to claim him on waivers. I don't think the Patriots should have any issue having Danny Etling clear waivers and get on their practice squad if they choose to keep him around this season. He didn't play a lot this summer. It seems like the Patriots were trying to hide him in the preseason earlier. Then he took every single offensive snap in the game last night, and it's just very clear that there's a lot of work to do there. The fact that he was a 7th-round pick, I just can't see another team saying, all right, we need Danny Etling on our 53-man roster this year to be our 3rd or 4th quarterback or whatever that would take. Yeah. So I think that he would be on the practice squad this year.
Yeah, the fact that Etling's 3 or 4 most impressive standout plays last night were plays where he was just scrambling around. I mean, there was obviously the 86-yard touchdown, which I will say, as a general football fan, was awesome.
Yeah.
It was, you can't deny that. Looking up, we were sitting in the press box last night, I was looking down at my computer, looked up and saw Danny Etling with just miles of green space around him, no New York Giants defender anywhere close to him, and just sprinting down the sideline, and you see his teammates just kind of all celebrating, and Bill Belichick loved it. He came in a great mood to the post-game press conference afterwards. But the fact that Danny Etling didn't really do anything with his arm in this game, other than that 45-yard pass you mentioned to KJ May, he still was just incredibly erratic with short passes, intermediate passes, deep passes. Made a couple nice scrambles. Probably didn't make some of the smartest decisions to get smashed by linebackers after some of those scrambles, but I think maybe he's a guy who can develop down the road, but I don't think any NFL team is going to want to have even the possibility of him having to play real regular season snaps this year. So, like you said, I think the Patriots shouldn't have any trouble passing him through waivers and getting him onto the practice squad if that is their intention.
Here's a thought and a question for you guys. Do you think the Pats could find a better developmental quarterback on the waiver wire or on the practice squad? Or do you think they could potentially even trade for one? There's been some names out there: A.J. McCarron, Josh Dobbs, Tom Savage, RG3. Any of those names, do you guys like them? Do you think that's a possibility that we actually see another quarterback here on this team, say come Saturday or Sunday?
I don't particularly like those names. I guess I don't know a whole lot about Josh Dobbs, so maybe just the mystery surrounding him for me would make him a little bit more appealing than a Tom Savage or an RG3 or A.J. McCarron. One guy that I think is kind of interesting is Lions quarterback Jake Rudolph, just because he kind of ripped it up against the Patriots last preseason. we've got a buddy who's a Lions fan. Shout out to Jeff Hancock, former NESN employee. I asked him about Rudock, and he said that his arm strength isn't that great, and that might be why he might not make the roster. The Lions have Matt Castle as their backup quarterback to Matthew Stafford, so if they did keep around Rudock, that would be a developmental guy, maybe like a third stringer. But I kind of liked what I saw from Rudock last year, so maybe it's possible they would claim someone like that if he's on waivers. But in order to claim a guy who would be cut, that's eating up a spot on the roster spot, and I'm not sure if they would be able to get a guy like that onto the practice squad. So I don't know. I wouldn't be opposed to it. I certainly would not be opposed to bringing in a better developmental option than Danny Etling, just because I just don't know how much is there for him.
Yeah, I think you can say pretty confidently that Danny Etling will not be the most desirable backup quarterback, developmental quarterback that ends up on the open market by the end of this weekend. But it depends what the Patriots are looking for in that position. Do they want a guy that they can just kind of groom along and potentially he'll be something a couple years down the road, or do they want someone who's maybe a little bit more established and experienced in the league, who could maybe slide into a top backup role next season, or maybe even a guy that they can look at as a potential starter once Tom Brady retires, whenever that may be. Wow!
Got some breaking news here by Jim McBride of the Boston Globe. Patriots are trading safety Jordan Richards to the Falcons.
Wow.
That's a league source told Jim McBride that. So that's some big news.
That's going to be a very unpopular move around Patriots fans, huh?
All right, so I guess that kind of changes the scope of this podcast. And, fortunately, we're only about an hour away from home so that we can start writing about this. But just initial thought, I think Patriots fans are going to be very pleased about this, and this certainly increases the chances that Jason McCourty makes the Patriots 53-man roster.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's a bit of a surprise that Jordan Richards stuck around as long as he did. I mean, I know he was a second-round draft pick, but this is a guy that Patriots fans kind of have been wanting to see be shown the door for the last 2 or 3 years now. I mean, he just really never developed into the type of NFL player that you expect when you draft a guy in the second round. I mean, he couldn't really play safety, couldn't really play linebacker. He was decent on special teams, and I'm interested to see what the Patriots got back in this deal. But like you said, definitely increases the chances of Jason McCourty sticking around, which I already thought were pretty good after he only played about 22% of the snaps last night. I think the Patriots did believe that he's worthy of a spot on this team. But Mark, what's your read on this?
I think this is great news for Jason McCourty. He's a veteran on the bubble, a great locker room guy, and as this preseason went on, you could kind of see the Pats were trying to find a place for him on the 53-man roster. They started playing him on special teams a little bit, and then all of a sudden, for the first time since Pop Warner, they asked him to move from cornerback to safety, and right away I'm like, you know what, they want this guy on the roster, and I sort of understand it, right? More of a deep free safety, but the way the NFL's going, sometimes having those two deep safeties out there, it actually helps you. They do that a lot against guys like Ben Roethlisberger and big-time passers. But like you said, I don't think Patriots fans are really going to be disappointed by this. It also sort of brings up the topic of Patriots and their second-round picks.
Yeah.
They just really haven't worked out. And Jordan Richards is just another example. Like, truthfully, I was shocked last year when he was starting at linebacker. I was shocked when he played in the Super Bowl. And I wasn't shocked to see him out in the 4th preseason game. You know what, though? I am a little surprised another team traded for him. So it'll be interesting to see that compensation.
Yeah, I don't know what the Falcons plan to do with Jordan Richards, but coming from experience watching Jordan Richards, there's not much the Falcons can do with Jordan Richards. All right, so I think we've hit on that, but one other topic that I just want to bring up that I thought was interesting from last night's game that really does tie into the Patriots roster cuts, nice little bridge there, was the players who did not play in that game. There was 34 Patriots players who ran sprints before the game, and none of those players entered the game. And I think that on face value, you kind of look at those guys as possible locks to make the roster. But there were some very interesting names among that group, one of which was running back Mike Gillislee, who I think we all thought was not going to make the roster. Another one was wide receiver Riley McCarron, who we thought was certainly on the roster bubble, maybe on the outside looking in to that wide receiver position. I thought that Gillislee was probably the more interesting of the two, and I think it really raises the question, of how injured are Rex Burkhead and Sony Michel? Is it possible that either one of those guys has to start the season on injured reserve? Because if the Patriots keep Mike Gillislee and they keep Jeremy Hill, who also didn't play in that game, then you're talking about the Patriots possibly entering the season with 6 running backs in Sony Michel, Rex Burkhead, James White, Jeremy Hill, Mike Gillislee, and Brandon Bolden, and that is way too many running backs.
That's a lot.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like unless they're trading Mike Gillislee, which is a possibility, maybe they sat him for this game because they didn't want to get him hurt. But at the same time, if you already decided that you were going to trade Mike Gillislee, why haven't you traded Mike Gillislee? I mean, maybe that news will come down before the end of this podcast, but it's hard to imagine them keeping 6 running backs on the 53-man roster. I mean, I guess unless Sony Michel is going to miss the first 1 or 2 weeks, and then you'll bring him back, but then you kind of have to cut one of those guys at some point anyway. I don't know. I think the most plausible reasoning for this is either Sony Michel or Rex Burkhead is going to IR, or Mike Gillislee is being traded. I just think there's no need for that many bodies at that one position.
You know, it's sort of, seeing Mike Gillislee not play last night was a surprise to me. I think it also sort of highlights what's going on with Rex Burkhead and Sony Michel. And when you're dealing with 2 guys who you expect to not only make your team but make an impact, and they have knee injuries, you have to take it along slow. That's like, Sony Michel has been dealing with knee injuries really since high school, and the fact that he already is during his first training camp in the NFL is a little concerning. And then when you hear Rex Burkhead has reportedly a slight tear in his knee, I say to myself, man, you know what? They might actually need to use Mike Gillislee, Jeremy Hill in week 1. I mean, from what I know, I don't know if Rex Burkhead actually has been a full participant. I don't think he has been. For those who don't know, we only get to see 5 to 15 minutes of practice, and when we actually see them, Sony Michel's not doing anything, Rex Burkhead's barely doing anything, so are those guys actually going to play against the Texans? I would be a little surprised, and if they don't, you need those bodies.
Yeah, I think that, it's pretty crazy. I think one other thing to account for with Mike Gillislee is that he does have a relatively high cap hit for a running back. What is it this year? $2.4 million. Yep. That's pretty high to keep around as a 6th running back. And, if he does make the week 1 roster, since he is a vested veteran, that his salary would be guaranteed for the season. So even if you're keeping around Mike Gillislee for, the first few weeks, waiting for Burkhead and Sony Michel to get healthy, then you might have to release him later on in the season. That money is still on the books. So it's kind of an issue that he's making so much money. So I still don't know. I mean, I think that when you looked at all those players doing sprints on the field, you assumed that all of them were making the roster. I just still don't know about Mike Gillislee. I haven't convinced myself the Patriots like him enough to make the roster, just because he was benched for most of last season. When he was getting opportunities, he got hurt, and then he's really been pretty poor this whole preseason. Jeremy Hill has been much better with him while getting reps with similar offensive linemen, going up against similar defenders. It's been very clear-cut who's the better player there, and obviously the Patriots like Sony Michel and Rex Burkhead better than him. So I don't know. Maybe they are just going to be forced to keep him around. I don't know if any of the running backs who played last night, that was Ralph Webb, Kenneth Farrow, and Khalfani Muhammad, I don't know if any of them would have done enough to push Gillislee off the roster. I certainly don't think Ralph Webb did, despite the fact that he's got a bunch of touchdowns this season. I haven't been impressed with him on a snap-to-snap basis. And Kenneth Farrow had some decent moments last night, but you're talking about him taking those against, 2nd, 3rd, 4th teamers on the Giants, so I'm not sure how much you can even put stock into how he played last night.
Yeah, to go off the Michel thing for a second, this is kind of projecting down the road because we don't know. There's a chance Sony Michel could be back on the field in week 1 and all this could be kind of irrelevant. But when you look at this Patriots draft class as a whole, there's a chance that they could get production from maybe only one player in this whole class. I mean, if you go down the list, Isaiah Wynn is already or will be on IR very shortly. He's already out for the entire season. Duke Dawson, we haven't seen him play much at all this preseason. There's a chance that he could end on IR, or even if he makes the 53-man roster, he could be a guy who hardly sees the field because he hasn't done anything to separate himself from a lot of these other talented cornerbacks on this list. Sony Michel, we just talked about a whole bunch. Javon Bentley, the linebacker, will be very much in the mix. He he seems like he will be a every game contributor for the Patriots this season. Pseudo starter, yes. But Christian Sam, the linebacker, he didn't play last night. We're not projecting him to make the team. Ryan Izzo is not making the team. Braxton Berrios not making the team. Keon Crossan maybe making the team, but
now that Richards is traded,
it definitely increases his chances. But he's a guy who's very raw, definitely needs some work. And then Danny Etling probably not making the team. So you could look at this draft class. You really might not end up getting much out of it this season. I mean, it all depends on how Michel pans out with his injury, but right now it's looking a little dicey.
It's not just this draft class. I mean, look at last year. I mean, Derek Rivers, we still don't know what we have. I have high hopes for Dietrich Wise. Obviously, the big offensive tackle, Connor McDermott, isn't here. And who was the fourth guy?
Antonio Garcia.
Who just got cut by the Jets.
He was just cut by the Jets. You can go to the draft class before that. Like, what does that become? What happened to Malcolm Mitchell? What's going to happen with Vincent Valentine? Hey, where's Jacoby Brissett? The last handful.
Cyrus Jones could be cut.
Cyrus Jones could be cut on Saturday.
Landon Robertson, Ted Karras might be like the big contributors from that draft class, right? And Joe Tooney, I guess, too, yeah.
And I think when you look at the Pats, I would say just lack of youthful depth, the lack of young pieces compared to maybe some other NFL teams. You need to look at these last 3-4 draft classes and say, man, they've had a lot of misses. Now, they also haven't had a lot of first-round picks. There's going to become a time and a point where they need to start to hit on these guys.
Ian Rappaport from NFL Media said it's a conditional 7th-round pick going back to the Patriots for safety Jordan Richards. I mean, that seems fair.
Yeah, you couldn't imagine them getting anything much more for Jordan Richards.
Weird they didn't get like Julio Jones or Calvin Ridley or
Mohamed Sanu.
Yeah, Mohamed Sanu.
Calvin Ridley straight up for Jordan Richards, I think would have been.
Yeah, I think that would have been fair. Just to get into Richards' thing a little bit more, just because we didn't go through that fully. The Patriots' locks at safety 100% are Devin McCourty, Deron Harmon, and Patrick Chung. You have to throw Nate Ebner into that mix as well, even though he's more of a special teamer. He really didn't play a lot this preseason, though, as he was coming back from the torn ACL that happened kind of later during the 2017 season.
In December, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it was odd that the Patriots pulled him off the physically unable to perform list as early as they did, because I think it actually probably would have benefited them to have him start the season on PUP and maybe come back halfway through. But as far as that 5th safety spot goes, I think you almost have to like write in very hard pencil Jason McCourty's name, because you certainly don't want Demarius Travis making this roster. I think that Patriots fans would be even less happy if he were to make the roster than if Jordan Richards made it.
He had a very rough preseason. Yeah, I mean, unless they do some
trade,
unless they do a trade or do some weird finagling and end up keeping 9 offensive linemen or 7-8 linebackers or something like that. Yeah, I mean, this trade is very, very good news for Jason McCourty. I mean, at this point, it does seem like he does have a spot on the 53-man roster. And
just one more thing on Jason McCourty. I started to think, like, why is Jason McCourty playing free safety? And I started to think, is it possible that the Patriots are prepping for a possible suspension for Deron Harmon, who was detained at a Costa Rican airport when he carried marijuana on a flight? I did reach out about that, like asking, do we know that Deron Harmon's not getting a suspension? And if he is going to be suspended, no one knows about it at this point. So it seems as though that's probably not going to happen. The NFL is a little bit weird about these things. Sometimes they spring these things on players, on teams, but as of now, no one has heard anything about a possible suspension for Deron Harmon. So it seems like that Jason McCourty move to safety probably had a lot more to do with Jordan Richards in this potential trade than it would on Deron Harmon's status entering the 2018 season.
It's interesting the way the Pats use their safeties in general, right? I mean, the only true strong safety is Patrick Chung, but the way they've used him, it's almost like a pseudo linebacker. We've seen him in the box. He's helped out against the run. Hell, he's played slot corner for them at times. So I feel like they have so many different guys in this roster that have versatility. They can sort of mix and match depending on their matchup against the offense. Just seeing a guy like Jason McCourty, it actually makes sense, right? I mean, hypothetically, if you want to move Eric Rowe into the slot, who would you rather have on the outside? Would you rather have Jason McCourty or would you rather have J.C. Jackson? I mean, personally, I like J.C. Jackson, his potential, but the fact that Jason McCourty's been around for so long that maybe the Pats might feel more comfortable with a 10-year veteran out there, especially, this first half of the regular season. So, yeah, I definitely think Jason McCourty factors into this, but I also wonder if we'll see something else happen down the next 2 days with the safety position. Do they try to add a backup strong safety to their practice squad? Do they see someone out there they think will get cut that they could claim? I mean, this will probably not be the last trade, before Sunday.
It was interesting to me that Jordan Richards was playing so much at free safety during the preseason, because when we saw him last year, he basically played almost exclusively strong safety and even bumped up to a legitimate linebacker role in some of those games. And then when we saw him for a lot of the preseason, he did play some at that strong safety spot, but for a lot of it, he was playing that deep free safety. That it's a spot that really doesn't fit in well with his skill set at all. And I thought that was interesting. And then to see Jason McCourty move back there, it gives a little bit of credence that maybe to the fact that maybe they were trying to shore up that position with given a potential Duron Harmon suspension coming. But yeah, I mean that's all pure speculation, and at this point it does seem like Jason McCourty is a good fit for that spot, at least on an emergency basis. If you need to put somebody back there, there are worse players to put there than a 10-year veteran defensive back who has been around this league for a long time.
I would also say just about the Patriots safety position that you might think that since the Patriots play their nickel defense with 3 safeties, that a 4th safety is really paramount to what the Patriots do on defense. But I actually suspect that if Devin McCourty, Patrick Chung, or Duron Harmon got hurt, the Patriots would just slide over to a 3-cornerback nickel. I don't think that they would force a 4th safety into their defense if Harmon, McCourty, or Chung got hurt. I think that just Jonathan Jones or maybe Jason McCourty or J.C. Jackson or a cornerback would just wind up taking most of those snaps from that injured safety. And the Patriots do have enough versatility in those 3 safeties that they start to mix the pieces around. If Patrick Chung got hurt, I think that Devin McCourty would just take over that strong safety role. If Devin McCourty got hurt, then Duron Harmon would just take over that free safety role. And if Duron Harmon got hurt, then Devin McCourty would just stick as more of a traditional free safety. You'd have Patrick Chung playing strong safety, and then, like I said, you'd have Jonathan Jones or someone else playing that slot role. So I think that the Patriots' 3 safeties, you might think that it forces them into a corner by having to play 3 safeties, but there's enough versatility, there's enough maneuverability on this Patriots defense where a cornerback would just wind up playing more than whoever the backup safety, that 4th safety who's on the roster, would actually play.
I kind of have a crazy thought too. What if, say the Pats are in a pinch, do you think Eric Rowe, they would ever try him out at safety? And for those who don't know, Eric Rowe played safety in high school. He played safety for 3 out of 4 years in college. He's obviously moved and transitioned to cornerback, but he does have interesting size and athleticism that I always wondered if it didn't, completely work out for him on the outside, would safety be a spot that he could potentially help another team in? Maybe.
I think it's possible. I think that since he's your number 2 cornerback and since he's been so good during the preseason, I would be hesitant to move him to safety just because that might weaken everything around you. You might be better off just, using a different safety or maybe playing cornerbacks more than having to move Eric Rowe midway through the season. But he is another player who Bill Belichick even said last week or a couple of weeks ago has a lot of versatility on the roster, and the fact that he was able to play the slot last year. He's a perimeter cornerback. He does have the history at safety. He's even played in dime a little bit in like a pseudo linebacker spot. So yeah, he's definitely another guy on the roster who's got some versatility there. I think that might do it for this week's podcast. I think we might have covered all of our bases. Is there any position that you guys think that you want to discuss that we haven't talked about too much at this point?
Wait, Doug.
Yes.
Patriots going to sign Des Bryant.
I mean, the receiver thing we could touch on briefly. I don't know. I mean, it looks like they're keeping around Riley McCarron as that 4th wide receiver. I don't know. I mean, I think they probably still do try to bring in another receiver. I don't know if it's going to be a big name like Golden Tate or Des Bryant or Jeremy Maclin or whoever it might be, but I don't know. I think they need a little bit more depth there than they have.
It seems like they should, but we also have to keep in mind that once Julian Edelman comes back, they will need to get rid of one player from their roster doesn't have to be at wide receiver. It can be from elsewhere. But you theoretically will be back to quote-unquote full strength at that position after 4 weeks. Obviously, it depends on what happens over those first 4 weeks, assuming that they don't have any injuries at the position. But I think injuries are the main reason you need to keep Riley McCarron on this team, just because if Philip Dorsett or Chris Hogan or Cordell Patterson tweaks a hammy in week 1, then you're kind of screwed if you don't have anybody else at that position. So if they're happy enough with Riley McCarron, I think they can ride with that. But depending on who becomes available, both either on the waiver wire or in trades over the next couple of days, it might behoove them to kind of bump that position a little bit.
You could upgrade over Riley McCarron. You
could easily upgrade over Riley McCarron, who is a guy that, I mean, if any of these other wide receivers that they've had to cut over this offseason had panned out, Riley McCarron wouldn't have a spot on this team right now. So you can definitely upgrade over him, but depends on what deals are available.
Golden Tate?
We've heard a lot about Golden Tate. I mean, he's a guy that you're going to have to give up a little bit more for if you want to bring in, but he seems like a guy that could work around here. I mean, he's been incredibly productive for Detroit over the last couple of years.
He's kind of a Julian Edelman-ish player anyway. One last thing before we go. The Patriots did give Rob Gronkowski a raise. He could earn $4.3 million more this season if he had some incentives. They are not likely to be earned incentives technically, so that does not increase the Patriots' salary cap. The Patriots also reportedly cut Dwayne Allen's salary. We're not sure how much cap room that freed up, but the Patriots are heading into the season with a little bit more cap room than they previously had, based on trimming Dwayne Allen's salary, now trading away Jordan Richards. So there is a little bit more money freed up if they did want to trade for a receiver, whether it was Golden Tate or someone else. They do have a little bit more maneuverability there with the cap. So I think that will do it for this week's podcast. Thank you very much, Mark. You were kind of trapped in this podcast anyway, since you're in the backseat of the car anyway.
Your choices were to participate or to sit silently in the backseat while we record a podcast.
I was going to take a
nap. Much
appreciated. Yeah, I was going to take a nap, but with Doug's driving, that's impossible.
That's true. That's very true. All right. Well, thank you very much. You can follow me on Twitter at Doug Kide. You can follow Zach on Twitter at ZachCoxNessen. You can follow Mark on Twitter. Mark, what's your Twitter handle again?
Mark Daniels PJ.
And go to Providence Journal for all of Mark's coverage. Go to NESN.com for all of me and Zach's coverage. And Patriots are making roster cuts by Saturday at 4 p.m. There's probably going to be a lot of trades. There's probably going to be a lot of activity. So keep it on our Twitter feeds. Keep it on those websites for all of your Patriots coverage.